Samantha B. uses lies and wiggle logic to paint all Republicans as white supremacists. Here's the first clip.
White supremacist doesn't mean you're a character in American History X.
Note that she doesn't use the word just, as in white supremacist doesn't just mean you're American History X guy. She's trying to break the image of a white supremacist meaning an extremist to make us easier accept that it just means that guy living down the street from you. Now, she puts on her mind-reading cap.
It means your words and actions reveal a certain attitude about where people rank by shade.
Here she is being intentionally ambiguous, so that her phrasing is loose and vague enough to where almost anyone can be made to meet that description. For example, if you believe that all white people's achievements are based on discrimination, then you could be said to have a certain attitude about where people rank by shade. At the same time, it's vague enough to be read to mean you believe in a genetically superior race, like the Nazis. Her tonality makes it pretty clear which one she thinks Trump is. Here is the alleged evidence that Trump is a white supremacist. He makes 4 points here, and we'll take them one at a time.
If you own a business that attempts to keep black people from renting from you.
Here he alleges Trump is a white supremacist because he was sued for housing discrimination in the 1970s. Is this proof that Trump is a white supremacist? Well, for one, the evidence is sparse, and he never was found to have been discriminatory. For two, nearly every major landlord in New York was sued in the wake of the 1968 Fair Housing Act. And perhaps most sinister of all, around that time, nearly half of white people said they'd move out of an apartment building if black people lived there. So there is a chance that Trump was pushing this to promote his bottom line. But still, no evidence of that.
If you are reported to say that you don't want black people counting your money.
Next, he alleges Trump is a white supremacist because someone reported that Trump didn't want black people handling his money. Who reported that? It was someone who had just been fired by Trump, was working for a direct competitor to Trump, and was selling a book about how bad Trump was. This individual had all the financial incentive in the world to lie about Trump. No other sources have said that Trump didn't want black people counting his money.
If your response to the first black president is that they weren't born in this country.
Next, he alleges that Trump is a white supremacist because of birtherism. Are there any alternative explanations beyond Trump hating black people deep down in his heart? Well, for one, it was an insanely effective political tactic. It ingrained him with a political base years before he was a politician. Even if he ingrained himself with that political base through pure racism, that wouldn't mean Trump is a racist. That means he's a racial opportunist. Like, say, Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton. But there are other reasons that birtherism worked. For example, he had a foreign-sounding name. He was schooled abroad, partially in Muslim schools. His father was a foreigner. On some subconscious level, these details feel very un-American. So by questioning that Americanism, you can stand with those subconscious feelings.
If you say they weren't smart enough to go to Harvard Law School and demand to see their grades.
Next, he alleges Trump is a white supremacist because he demanded Obama's transcripts. And the way he frames it is that Trump didn't think black people were smart enough to attend Harvard Law School. But again, this can be viewed as an effective political tactic, without imputing any racial motive to Trump's heart of hearts. And if you look at the actual Trump quotes on that subject, none of it is about how Obama's too stupid to go to Harvard Law School. It's about how un-American he is, and about how he appeared out of nowhere. Those might not be kind or even tenable arguments, but they are not strong evidence of racism.
If that's the essence of your entire political identity, you might be a white supremacist.
The speaker then acts as if these 4 points are proof positive that Trump is a white supremacist, and goes on to state that this is the essence of his political identity. This ignores pulling out of the TPP, coal mining jobs, border wall, repealing Obamacare, none of that is about white nationalism, but none of that is addressed here. Also, those 4 points taken in isolation ignore his years of advocating for racial equality, the fact that he forced Palm Beach Country Club to accept blacks and Jews, the fact that he'd been working with Jesse Jackson for decades to advance blacks in corporate America, but none of that matters in the eyes of this speaker or in those of Samantha Bee, because she's ready to claim that not only does this prove Trump is a white supremacist, it also proves that all Republicans are.
And if nearly half the country voted for him after he did all those things, America might be white supremacist, or at least white supremacist curious.
People vote for a president based on a million factors. Foreign policy, the economy, the Supreme Court, to name a few. But Samantha Bee argues that if you are not wholly convinced of Trump's racism by those 4 shitty points, and that is not the only factor you look at in choosing a president, then you, sir, are a Nazi. Not a businessman who would favor his bottom line over racial equality, but a white supremacist, which sounds today very much like a Nazi, who is someone who believes in a strict racial hierarchy with genetically superior whites and implies a usage of violence to support that notion. In the current climate, many people believe it's okay to use violence against quote-unquote Nazis. And if that wasn't problematic enough, the fact that she's defining the entire GOP as Nazis means it's okay to use violence against half of the members of this country. She's wrong. Bad ideas are not beaten with violence. They're beaten with better ideas. But to beat ideas as horrifically bad as those espoused by Samantha Bee, you'll need ideas as good as mine. Thank you.